Hello everybody, here we are today and we're going to be talking about week 6 in the CFL and give my picks for the week. So before we get started with that, please make sure to subscribe if you're new to me or the CFL, whatever the case may be. That being said, let's get on into it. So last week, I believe I went 2-2 and I haven't really had a week where it's gone uber successful and I've gone 4-0. Good news is I haven't gone 0-4 for the year and the Lions are winning. So as a CFL fan, you know, it could be worse. So kicking it off with the first game of the week, we have the Toronto Argonauts against the Montreal Alouettes. This game feels fun because you saw these two play a couple weeks ago. Montreal was able to come out on top, and you have Montreal still undefeated, whereas Toronto looks to be probably the only serious threat to contend with him out east in the division. Ottawa, of course, Drew Brown ended up getting hurt in his game against Winnipeg. Hamilton is 0-5 on the year, so it probably looks like these two are going to be clashing it out for the division title. And if we're being honest, if Montreal won this game, it's far from being necessarily a lock for them to win the division at this point in the year, but it certainly would put Toronto back at the moment. And I think one thing to watch out for in this game is the passing game. I know, kind of shocking in a league where it's just two-down football for the most part, but looking at what Montreal has been able to do, they have the lowest yards per attempt against in the league, meaning that they aren't giving up a lot of, big plays on average. They have 3 passing touchdowns allowed in 5 games and 6 interceptions. On top of that, too, they've been able to get out to the quarterback, which is going to be something good to see, as Dukes is going to have to try to get past this team in Montreal that looks motivated to try to get another win, their second win in 3 weeks against them. Now, on the flip side, Toronto's secondary at points has been burned this year. Vernon Adams Jr. had a pretty big game. Claude Bethel-Thompson had a pretty good game. Cody Fajardo ended up having a relatively good game as well. All of these quarterbacks threw for over 280 yards and were able to see their team score points. Now, looking at last week for the Argos, Shea Patterson threw for like 200 yards, somewhere around there, something like that. But you also have to factor in the fact that the Riders' defense was able to force, like 4 or 5 turnovers in that game. If Montreal is able to throw the ball well, that could be an issue for Toronto. But on the flip side, Toronto's been able to run the ball relatively well too, and they were able to get through to Saskatchewan in some ways, as the Riders had like 3 yards allowed per carry up until they played the Argos. I think Kadeem Carey had like 90-some yards in that game. So maybe against a team like Montreal, you see Carey go off for a lot of yards. I don't know, but I do know what we've seen with Montreal over the past year. What is this now? 13 games in a row that they've won, while also being at home could be a huge motivating factor. Of course, Sean Lemon is suspended while they've got the whole hearing going on. Toronto, knowing they want to win this game and avoid being 2-3 after 5 games on the year. Obviously, you have the news that supposedly Chad Kelly is going to be starting for the Argos when he gets back from his suspension. A lot of things that seem to be just negative surrounding the Argos at the moment. They don't necessarily have to be. Why would Dukes necessarily have to give up his role as starter? Beats me. But anyway, for this, I'm going to be picking Montreal here. Dukes could go out there and have a bad game. Montreal's offense is probably going to get the job done and move to 6-0 on the year. The last time that happened, I'm not exactly sure, but it would be fun to see, as they are, the only team besides Saskatchewan left that is undefeated. And then you have a game that's very important, especially for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, as they host the Calgary Stampeders. I believe these two played each other earlier in the year. I might be mistaken there, but Calgary's coming off of a loss to Montreal where the Owls were able to clamp down in the second half. Winnipeg, meanwhile, was able to win thanks to the run game, as they ran the ball 37 times for over 200 yards in their win over the Ottawa Redblacks. Now, things are going to be interesting to watch out for, because is Calgary going to be able to stop the run against Winnipeg? Is Winnipeg going to be able to adapt where Streveler is going to have to throw the ball more than 20 times in a game? That is all something to see. And Demerio Houston, I think, is also going to be out for this game too. So maybe Winnipeg is going to be a little bit more eager to test the ball. Lucky Whitehead, of course, signed with the team recently. And while the Winnipeg receiving corps is dealing with some things, maybe, just maybe, they're able to have a game where they step up and get 300 yards passing or something like that. I really couldn't tell you. But I do know this. If you are a betting man and you think Winnipeg is going to run the ball a lot, check. And then they're going to run the ball well, check. You might want to place your bets now, as you could see them go against a Calgary defense that is struggling to defend the run. They have the highest yards per attempt, I believe, in the league, most rushing yards allowed per game. And with a team with Brady Mo Oliveira that just had over 100 yards, you had Streveler with over 80 yards rushing in last week's game as well too. Both of them had yards or rushes for over 25 yards or more. Maybe, kind of feels like something you could see, 2 or 3 rushing touchdowns in the game. I don't know. I'm going to pick Winnipeg again. I went against them last week for the first time. Now I'm 0-5. So you know what? We're going to pick Winnipeg and go 0-6 here, as Calgary could go out there and pick up the win, but I'm back in the Bombers. And then you have the Saskatchewan Roughriders traveling over to BC, and this is a huge game. The Saskatchewan Roughriders are undefeated. 4-0 on the year. The BC Lions are 4-1, winning 4 games in a row after their season-opening loss to the Toronto Argonauts. And I'm not going to lie, I was pretty frustrated as the Lions had that loss to the backup Dukes at the time, and then they had a close win against Edmonton. I was wondering if they were going to break out. And then they go out there and play the Hamilton Tiger Cats and score 34 first-half points, and they have, over 200 passing yards in the first quarter, something like that, and were just able to explode. Meanwhile, the Rough Riders defense is able to force 5 turnovers, and they are on a tear. They had 29 turnovers last season in 18 games played. They have 14 through the first 4, so they have about half of what they had last year in less than fourth amount of the time. Vernon Adams Jr. is just regularly throwing for over 300 yards. You have a test of Saskatchewan's D stepping up and making plays, or you have Vern possibly going out there and torching them. This is where you see whoever wins this taking charge of the West and maybe, just maybe, deciding who wins the division by the end of the year. And I'm not even going to be picking the Lions in this one because they are my team. I'm picking them because Patterson is going to be stepping up against Vernon Adams Jr., who is on a tear. He has 11 passing touchdowns on the year, I believe. Just 1 interception, is averaging nearly 350 yards per game through the air. This offense can and will be dangerous. Maybe Vern has a couple of passes that look bad, but I think that with this one, BC's offense is just going to be able to either grind down or just make things difficult for Saskatchewan by the end of the game, where they might not be able to run as effectively. I don't really know. I feel pretty confident in this one, but Saskatchewan's been able to prove me wrong, I think, twice this year so far. And then the final game of the week, you have the Ottawa Redblacks and the Edmonton Elks. And a couple of years ago, or even just up until this season, you probably would have thought these would have been the 2 teams that maybe would have been winless at this point. Now you have Hamilton and Edmonton. But looking at this game, is Drew Brown going to be back? At the moment, at the time of recording this, I don't know. Ottawa, they're 2-2. I don't really know how I feel about them at the moment. I do still think they're going to be good enough to make the playoffs out east, but Edmonton has been so close in all their games. They have lost all 4 of these games by a combined 17 points. Their offense, I think, can score a lot of points, and I think their defense against a team like Ottawa right now, where Crum could be the starter, could go out there and thrive. I think for this game, I'm going to be picking Edmonton mainly because they've been in a lot of close games. They're at home. They're due for a win. MBT's been able to impress me. Whether or not this team is going to go out and get off to a good start is one thing or another. I do think that Ottawa could certainly go out there and win this, and I wouldn't be surprised to see if maybe they were the favorite in this game, even if Brown wasn't able to go out there and start. And yeah, I don't really know why I'm justifying this when you probably need MBT to have a big game because they haven't really established the run, but I'm going to be picking Edmonton here, getting a little bit spicy with the pick, and that will be my final pick for the week. So for this week, I will be picking the Montreal Alouettes, the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, BC Lions, and Edmonton Elks. So those are my picks. What are yours for Week 6 in the CFL? Let me know down below in the comments. Also, please make sure to like this video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you're new. Everybody stay safe. Hey, have a great night.